King Charles and Queen Camilla are expected at the White House at 10:35 Eastern Time this morning. They're going to be participating in a formal arrival ceremony with President Trump and First Lady, kicking off a jam-packed day in Washington, D.C. Our own Martha MacCallum is at the White House and joins me now. Martha, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, David. Good to be with you.
You know better than anybody. The U.S. and the U.K. have been giving each other kind of cold shoulders, particularly since the Iran conflict began. How much could the royals' visit warm up our relations with the U.K.?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, and it really, I think, could fall in some ways on King Charles to try to sort of remind his own country and our country about the strength that the United Kingdom and the United States have been able to project in the world in the past. Recent history in the UK shows a shrinking of their military. They used to have 160 ships after the Cold War, David. Now they have 60. They put a big focus on other things, as you well know, like green energy. There's no doubt, and you know, they have a lot of socialist influence in their government. And there's no doubt in my mind that President Trump will find opportunities in the one-on-ones to talk to King Charles about what he sees as a deterioration in some elements of this relationship. But I'm reminded, when you talk about what the president just put out on Truth Social moments ago, the UK has a lot of economic interests in the Strait of Hormuz. And all we've heard so far from them is that once the whole thing is resolved, they're trying to figure out a way to show up with some of the other European countries to help keep the strait open. But that isn't where we are yet. And what we need now is, I know that from the beginning, President Trump has wanted a concerted effort on the part of our allies, who he says, you know, it raised a big question for him about whether or not they would stand up when there was an actual test. And he feels that they failed that test in NATO when it came to this Iran war. You know, Queen Elizabeth spoke of the tensions that exist in the world and the importance of the United States and the UK to bring stability to the world so that people could live their regular, normal lives and go about their day. That's why you provide stability as governments. And there's a big question now as to whether or not the UK is holding up their end of the bargain.
Right, right. Well, clearly, though, the president and the king, I mean, the president has said some very mixed messages about the prime minister, but nothing but good things about King Charles, particularly since his coronation. It seems that they really like each other, no?
No, they do, and they've known each other a long time. I think the president's very excited about this visit, and the first lady has worked hard to really create a great experience. President Trump said the other night, you know, we're going to have a lot of fun when King Charles comes, and I think that's absolutely the plan. You can hear the bands warming up behind us as they get ready for this arrival ceremony. And I think that, you know, if there is one good thing about the constitutional monarchy in the UK, it's that when there is this kind of divide, there is someone who has some authority, a lot of authority, who can maybe sort of bridge that gap a little bit. And I think there's definitely an effort underway to do that. It's also a big deal for King Charles. He waited for over 50 years to become king, and it's his first visit to the United States as king. So he's getting a lot of attention. I met him and the Queen yesterday at the garden party, and they were in great mood and seemed very excited about the whole trip.
How liked are they by the British people? I mean, they've had a sort of a love-hate situation with the royals over the past several decades, really, going back to the death of Princess Diana. I mean, has that been mended? Has the king done a lot to kind of mend the relationship between the royals and the general public?
Well, you know, I mean, the Queen had 80% approval ratings, and his are in the 60s, roughly. I just think that's because she was so beloved, and she reigned for so long, and she was such an integral part of most people in the United Kingdom's entire, you know, generational experience in the United Kingdom. So I think Charles's numbers are a little low. I think that's you know, we see that here too. I mean, no leaders seem to have the kind of approval numbers that were possible in the past in these days. But I do think that overall, I've always felt that the animosity against the royal family in the UK is overblown. That there are certainly people who would love to do away with it, but keep in mind that tourism is largely based on people wanting to see castles and wanting to see royalty and all of it. So they bring in a ton of money through tourism for the United Kingdom.
They do indeed.
They pull a lot of weight. I know there's a lot of people saying they cost too much, but they also pull quite a bit of weight in that regard, David.
And it's nice for you not having to go over there to cover them as you usually do. Now they came to you. That's how important Martha MacCallum
exactly.
is. All right, Martha, thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thanks, David.
Enjoy the
Always good to
show.
see you.
It's going to be quite something.